we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Once again, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have everybody here once again here on this Friday, January 5th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about. So, we're pretty much just going to preview all the games for this weekend. If you tuned in for the GSMC Baseball Podcast show, I basically said that. That's what we're going to do. The national championship is on Monday, so I'll talk about that on Monday. Yeah, and I didn't screw up saying the wrong podcast that I was doing, because I did that on the baseball show. I said, going into the first break, I said, stick around for the GSMC Football Podcast. We'll be right back. But it was the baseball show. It was the baseball podcast. So hopefully that doesn't happen for this show, and I say the baseball show instead. But yeah. So let's get right into the Saturday games here, because we'll start off previewing those games. So 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Both games will be on ABC. There's no Monday night game, of course. Well, national championship being on Monday. Also, it being the last week of the regular season. And also, there's no Thursday night game to talk about, too. So, yeah, it's just the games on the weekend. So, you got the Steelers and the Ravens as the first game. And then you have the Texans and the Colts for the second game. So, with the Steelers and the Ravens, it's going to be interesting, because the Ravens, it doesn't seem like they're going to be playing their starters. I know I've talked about, this leading up into the game. And, obviously when they did this a few years ago, Lamar Jackson's MVP season, they came out flat against the Titans in the divisional round, and they ended up getting eliminated. So you would think that some of the starters are going to play, of course. Lamar Jackson probably isn't going to play, I don't think, unless something was confirmed. But I'm pretty sure he was not going to play tomorrow. But let's just take a quick look. Yeah, so he's not going to play against the Steelers. It's going to be Tyler Huntley. But this is a big game for the Steelers, because if they win, that really benefits. I mean, that benefits them, because they're fighting for a playoff spot, of course, trying to get one of the wild cards. If they win, they go 10-7. They've won their last two games after going on that 3-game losing streak against the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Colts. They've scored 30 points in back-to-back weeks. Mason Rudolph has played well since he's taken over, as the starting quarterback. Kenny Pickett's healthy, but they're still sticking with Rudolph. But even with the Ravens' backups in, I think this is still going to be a tough game. I think the Steelers still win the game, but I think it's going to be close. Right now, the Ravens are 3-point underdogs. I'd take the points. I think this game definitely will be close. I mean, you even go back to last year, and Kenny Pickett had to have that game-winning drive. I talked about that. Him connecting with Najee Harris for that touchdown to win the game. That was against Tyler Huntley. I think we could see something similar to that, it being a 3-point game. So I take the Ravens with the points, but I think the Steelers will win. If we look at the league rankings for both teams, obviously it's going to be different because you're not going to see, some of the Ravens starters playing, and the Steelers, the quarterback carousel throughout the season. So at when you look at passing yards per game, you got the Steelers at 29, and the Ravens are at 21. And then rushing yards, you got the Steelers are at 12, the Ravens are at number 1. Then points per game, of course, the Ravens are second, and the Steelers are 27th. And if you could hear in the background, my dog is chewing on something, and of course she's doing it right up against the door. So I'm like trying to. That's what you're hearing in the background, is her right up against my door, having to do that, and that's why I'm like trying hard not to laugh right now. And then when you look on the defensive side of the ball for both teams, the Ravens are 9th, Steelers are 23rd. Against the run, the Ravens are 13th, the Steelers are 18th, and then points allowed, the Ravens defense is 1, the Steelers are 7th. So, man, I don't know why I'm like it's hard for me not to laugh, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, I think the Steelers should win, but it's going to be tough. Regardless. I mean, this is a rivalry game. I mean, even with the Ravens backups in, it's still going to be tough. And I don't trust the Steelers to cover here. So I'm going to take the Ravens with the points, but I think the Steelers win. I go to 10-7. Mike Tomlin's got another winning season. So, yeah. And then we go to the second game. You got the Texans and the Colts. Of course, that's the bigger game of the two. So, yeah, I mean, if the Steelers lose, I mean, they need a lot of things for them to, go right for them. With this game here, I mean, even if like one of these teams loses, they're not. I mean, they still have. I mean, they still have a decent chance to maybe make the playoffs. I think the Texans are going to win. The last time these two teams met, this was all the way back in. What was it? It was week 2. 31 to 20 was the score. That was back Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud were going at it for the first time. And let's see. So C.J. Stroud, 30 of 47, 384 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Actually, Anthony Richardson got hurt in this game. Gardner Minshew actually played most of it. Went 19 of 23, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Yeah, this game happened so long ago, I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, now you got C.J. Stroud back, made his return last week, had a good game. The Colts, coming off of a win against the Raiders. I like the Texans to win this game. If we look at the league rankings for both of these teams, so the Texans are 4th in passing yards per game. The Colts are 20th. Rushing yards per game, the Colts are 13th. Texans are 22nd. Points per game, the Colts are 10th, and the Texans are 14th. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Colts are 16th against the passing yards per game. Texans are 27th. Rushing yards, the Texans are actually 3rd against the run. The Colts are 27th. And then points allowed, Texans are 13th. The Colts are 27th. But I think this is going to be a nail-biter too. I mean, listen, I give the Colts a lot of credit. I give both teams a lot of credit. I mean, we really didn't expect, these teams to be in this position. With the Jags struggling, now they got a chance at winning the division. The Jags obviously, have a divisional game against the Titans on Sunday. And, the Colts being at home, it's going to be tough, but I don't know. I like the Texans right now. The line actually did move at least on CBS. So, it started out with the Texans being a 1-point underdog. Now they're a 1-point favorite. I like them in this game. You got Stroud back, you got Nico Collins back. Again, it's going to be tough, but I feel like the Colts can win this game. Both teams can win this game, but I like the Texans here, but I think it's going to be really close. It is going to be really close. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I'd like to see Jonathan Taylor get the ball more because he scored a rushing touchdown, in back-to-back weeks, and then he hasn't done anything. Actually, let's look at his stats from the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, the last 2 weeks. He's gotten a lot of carries though. 18 carries last week. 2 weeks ago. 21 carries against the Raiders, but not a lot of big runs from him. His longest run this year was a 42-yard run against the Saints. But yeah, last week it was 15. Week before that was 13. But yeah, he has scored a rushing touchdown. In the last 4 games that he's played in. So, but we'll see if he can have a monster game here because they're going to need it. And the Colts, they have a good running game, with him and Zach Moss, who's run the ball effectively this year. So, we'll see what ends up happening here. But yeah, I got the Texans winning. I'm going to say it's going to be like a field goal game. Maybe it's going to be like 23-20, something like that. But we'll see. You're going to feel bad for whoever loses this game. But then you just got to hope that the Jags maybe lose. I think it'll hurt. It's going to hurt the Colts more if they lose because I know because they lost to Jacksonville twice. The Texans, they at least, they beat the Jags. They split with them. So, but we'll see. These games both should be close, I would say. But, the way I pick, again, last week I got 8 wins. These last, 8 weeks I've gotten 7 or 8 wins. I've just been that consistent, that average, all year. There was that 1 week I got 12. There was 2 weeks that I got 5. The first 2 weeks I got 9, which was good. But I have, I mostly get either 7 or 8 wins, which is ridiculous. But these 2 games I'm kind of set on who I'm going to pick, which is not good because one of them I'm going to. I haven't done good on these Saturday triple headers or the last week's game I took the Cowboys. I laid the points, but it didn't pan out. So yeah, it's we'll see what happens. Hopefully this is the week that I end up finally winning a week in the spread pool, but I say that every week. It's probably not going to happen. So but when we come back from our first break of the show, we're going to preview all the early window games. A lot of these games, these are the less important games. In the early slate, the later half is where you got all of the most of the teams fighting for playoff spots and things like that. But we'll go through the games in the early slate. We'll talk about them. I'll give you my picks. Again, some of them will be subject to change because I just don't know. There's some teams that you don't know who's playing and who's not playing. Yeah. Also, actually, the other thing I forgot to mention with the Ravens. So they actually signed Dalvin Cook. So the Jets cut him. The Ravens picked him up. So he's going to be part of their backfield, and we'll see what he ends up doing with them. If he can maybe find some, find that pre-Jets era Dalvin Cook. We'll see if he could find, himself looking more like the Vikings Dalvin Cook as opposed to what, he looked like with the Jets. But, yeah, I forgot to mention that. So, yeah, when we come back from our first break, we'll talk about the early window games. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're now going to preview the early window games for Sunday. Just went through the Saturday games, so let's go through them. So, actually, we do have the NFC South games in the 1 o'clock window. So you got the Bucs and the Panthers, and the Falcons and the Saints. So how the scenarios work here is, I mean, the Bucs just got to win and they're in. The Saints, they make it on a, there's still wild card scenarios, of course. But the Saints, if they win and the Bucs lose, the Saints win the South. And then if the Falcons win and the Bucs lose, then the Falcons win the South. Baker Mayfield was dealing with a rib injury this week, but Todd Bowles said he is going to play, so keep an eye on that. Yeah, the Bucs coming off a disappointing game against the Saints. I mean, all the Bucs really had to do was just win, and take care of business. And then the Saints were like, "Hey, we're still, we still got talent on our team. Derek Carr played a good game." So, I mean, the Bucs are playing the Panthers, so I think they should win. But I did say this earlier in the week. I really just don't trust the Bucs. I feel like this is a game they could definitely lose. I don't know why. I just have a weird feeling. I'm still going to take them to win. The line started at 5.5, or actually no, the line started at 6 and it went down to 4.5. And the Panthers, they got embarrassed last week, losing 26-0 to the Jags, to C.J. Beathard. I feel like I don't know. I'm going to take the Bucs to win, but I might take the Panthers with the points, just because I don't know. I just really don't trust the Bucs right now. And this is literally after praising them for the last several weeks and how Baker Mayfield's been playing. I finally picked them last week and then they lose. So if I pick them again, they might lose again, and then they're going to miss out on the division. And then when it comes to the Saints and the Falcons, I mean, these teams played a couple weeks ago. Well, actually, I think it was more than that. When did they play? Oh, wait. They played in Week 12. Falcons won 24-15. I feel like the Saints get revenge here and they win this game. I know Taylor Heineke was a little banged up, so I don't know what his current status is for this game. Because if not, then it might end up being Desmond Ridder that ends up getting the start. So, obviously the Bears coming off of that loss, or Falcons coming off of that loss to the Bears. So Heineke is questionable. Yeah, he still remains limited. But yeah, if it's not Heineke, it's going to end up being Desmond Ridder. But I would still take the Saints. I mean, I don't even trust them taking them as a favorite at home. Because, the Falcons, they got playmakers on their offense, so they could definitely put up points. But, yeah, I don't know. Right now I got the Saints winning and covering. So, then we move on. We'll go to the... now we'll talk about the AFC South. So, the Jags 9-7, Titans are 5-11. These two teams actually played, in that Saturday night last year in Jacksonville. Josh Dobbs was the quarterback. That was for the division, basically. And the Jags were able to get that win. Trevor Lawrence is banged up. I feel like he is going to play in this game. But even if he does, he's still going to be hurt. I mean, since the Bengals game, I mean, he's been getting hurt constantly. I mean, I think the Jags should win, but it's going to be a tough game. In the spread pool, the line was 5.5. Well, it started at 5.5. And then since it's gone down to 3.5, I'm taking the Titans with the points. I think the Jags still win, but I really don't trust them right now. So I'm gonna take the Titans. they cover, but I think the Jags still win. But again, don't feel great about it. A lot of these games I just don't really know. Then you got the other games here. The Lions and the Vikings. Right now the Lions are 3.5-point favorites. I mean, the Lions are kind of locked into the playoff spot that they're in. I don't know if they're going to be playing their starters the whole game. So I got to see what the who ends up being active, who ends up being inactive for this game. Because if the Lions hit a bunch of their starters, then I'm going to end up switching to the Vikings. But right now, Lions win and cover. We'll just go with that, but subject to change. And then two more games here. You got the Bengals and the Browns. The Browns are going to be sitting their starters. I mean, I don't feel great about picking this game. Actually, the starting quarterback in this game is going to be Jeff Driscoll. He's going to be starting this game. The Browns picked him up and they're starting him. So I mean, I guess I'll take the Bengals to win. 7 is a big number. So I don't know. I know it's 5.5 in my spread pool. Take the Browns with the points. Bengals win though. And then finally you got the Patriots and the Jets. Wow. And this actually could very well be Bill Belichick's last game, coaching for the Patriots, which is crazy to think about. That we are this could possibly be an end of an era. I like the Patriots to win this game. They, continue their dominance against the Jets. I don't really know what else to say about this game, but the Patriots still own the Jets, and I think that continues. I'd be surprised if anything else happens. I mean, if the Jets end up winning, if Tom Brady ends up losing his final regular season game with the Patriots to a divisional opponent, maybe Bill Belichick does the same thing, loses to the Jets. Obviously, Patriots played another game in the playoffs and lost to the Titans, that year in 2019, because the Patriots were going for the 2 seed, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins said, "Nope, you're not getting that. You're not getting that in the bye," and they ended up losing. Fitzpatrick throwing that touchdown to Mike Gesicki for the win, and then the Patriots ended up losing in the wild card round against the Titans. Logan Ryan getting that pick 6, the last pass Tom Brady ever threw as a Patriot. I think the Patriots do win here because the Jets just they just cannot beat the Patriots no matter what. Maybe next year will be different, but I think Bill Belichick wins, and if this is it, he goes out on a high note. So to run through the picks again, so right now, taking the Panthers with the points, taking the Lions, laying the points, taking the Saints, 3-point favorites over the Falcons, taking them. I'll take the Browns with the 7, but the Bengals still win. Patriots I'll take as a 1.5-point favorite. Titans I'll take with the points, but I think the Jags still win. But yeah, that's but then the rest of the games are all at in the later window here. Yes, there's only there's 6 early window games, and then there's not including the Sunday night. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. There's 7 late window games, and then 8 including the Sunday night game. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, I think the Bucs, I don't trust them, but I think they should win. But I could definitely see something happening because the Panthers, both of their wins have come at home. So I expect them to play a little bit better than they did. Well, I expect them to play. They should play a lot better than they did against the Jaguars, because that was just, I don't know what that was. But we talked about this yesterday. I mean, they've struggled. They put up 30 points against the Packers, and then they can't, score anything against C.J. Beathard and the Jags. So, and the last time they played the Bucs, it was a close game. It was 21-18. They could have pulled off an upset there, but Mike Evans had a big game there, so he's going to need to have one here. And Baker's going to have to bounce back after a rough game against the Saints. They did get Chris Godwin more involved. Chris Godwin actually had a monster game last week against the Saints. How many receiving yards did he have? Let's see. Chris Godwin last week had. Oh, I don't know why I thought he had. Oh, I guess it was the week before, the couple weeks before that against Green Bay at 155. But yeah, he had 3 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, that was towards like the end of the game. The Packers game is the one I was thinking of, because he had he had over 150 yards. But yeah, I mean, listen, the Bucs should win, but again, who knows? And then the Saints, I mean, they still have a path to the playoffs if they, if they win and are eliminated from the AFC South contention, because you still got Seattle who could lose, you got Green Bay that could lose. They still got a shot, even if the Bucs win, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And if the Saints, if they could have played like how they played against the Bucs on Sunday, they'd be in a much better position. But they've been one of those inconsistent teams all season. So before we go into our second break of the show, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back, we'll preview the late window games. These are the games with pretty much all of the pretty much all have playoff implications involved in them with teams. So except maybe like one or two. But yeah, that is what we will. That's what we'll preview when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now preview the late window games for Sunday. So we'll try to go through the less important games and then get into the more important games. So, yeah, a lot of these games, actually, they're resting starters, like the Niners and the Rams game, like pretty much all the... Well, the Rams are resting pretty much all of their starters. The Niners, seems like, other than McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, everybody else is going to play. It seems like Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle are going to play. I don't know about on defense, but I do have the Rams right now to cover, but I don't know. I could change that. The Rams, they're pretty much locked into their playoff spot. The Niners got the 1 seed. But obviously, that's why it's just like tough. Like, because on one hand, it's like if you rest, it's good to rest the starters, but it's also bad because then they could be rusty when you come back because of the layoff. But if you play them and they get hurt, then it's like, well, why'd you play them? It's just that's going to be like a never-ending debate. But yeah, we're actually going to see Carson Wentz against Sam Darnold. It looks like, so that'll be an interesting matchup. But yeah, I got the Rams right now with the points, but I might change that. I got to think about it. The Chiefs are playing the Chargers right now. I mean, that line went from like 1.5 to now 3.5. The Chargers are favored over the Chiefs. We're going to see Blaine Gabbert against Easton Stick. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know what to do in that game. I honestly don't. I think right now I have the Chiefs still, but I might switch it. Let's just go into the important games. So, you got the Bears and the Packers. You got Seattle and the Cardinals. Obviously, these have huge implications when it comes to the wild card. Now with the Packers, and I've been saying this, and it's come up on social media. So last year, they play against the Vikings. They destroy the Vikings, and then they play a divisional opponent that really has nothing to play for, and then in the Lions, and the Lions end up knocking them out of the playoffs. The Packers had to win and they're in last year, that Sunday night game, and they ended up losing. Aaron Rodgers' final game, final game with the Packers. Now you got a similar situation here. Packers just come off of a big win over the Vikings. Now they're playing the Bears, who are eliminated from the playoffs. Got really nothing to play for. Actually, they are eliminated, right? Or I think they're eliminated pretty much. And Packers just got to win and they're in. But the Bears have been playing better as of late. Ever since Justin Fields has come back, I mean, they did. If they could have beaten the Lions and the Browns, I mean, you're looking at this team. This team right now is pretty much going to be a lock to get in, because they'd be 9-7, and or almost a lock to get in. But those were two heartbreaking losses. I mean, they were up by multiple scores against both of them, and they just you let the Lions score twice inside of like 5 minutes in that first game, and then against the Browns you were up by 10, and then Joe Flacco led the comeback. You had the Bears had their opportunities in that game. They could have caught the Hail Mary. Mooney should have caught the Hail Mary, and then you also had something I didn't talk about when I recapped that game was Robert Tonyan. Justin Fields threw him a great pass, and Tonyan dropped it, and that would have been a touchdown. So Bears could have had a better record, but yeah, they're sitting at 7-9. I like the Bears to cover in the game because the Packers are 3-point favorites. I like the Bears to cover, but I'm still going to take the Packers to win. Jordan Love has been on a tear recently. I mean, he's put together a good season overall. Almost 4,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. I mean, that's not bad for your first full year as a starter. And the Packers, even if they do lose, I mean, they got a young team, and they could definitely build off of this. But we'll see. We'll see if they can get it done this time. But the Bears' defense has been good as of late, so I'm a little worried about it. And I'm also worried. Look, the Packers' defense did play well against the Vikings, but you also had Jaron Hall starting, and by the time they put Nick Mullins in, the game was already out of reach. So I think if Nick Mullins played the full game, it would have been a lot different. But I'm going to take the Packers to win and cover. So that would basically knock Seattle out of the playoffs. Right now, the Cardinals are 3-point underdogs at home against them. I mean, I take the Cardinals with the points. I think Seattle should still win. But, the Cardinals, listen, they could put up points. I mean, we saw it last week against the Eagles. And, this is a divisional game. And, maybe the Cardinals, they want to go out on a high note and try to, upset the Seahawks and basically knock them out of the playoffs, even though if Green Bay wins they'll pretty much do that. But I'm gonna take the Cardinals to cover. I think the Seahawks still win though. And then some of the other games here. I mean, you got the Raiders and the Broncos. The Raiders right now are 2.5-point favorites. Jarrett Stidham is making his return to Vegas. Obviously he was with them last year. You got the two teams playing against each other that have benched their quarterbacks and, replaced them with Jarrett Stidham the last 2 years. I mean, last year they did it with Derek Carr. Stidham started. And now this year they did it with Russell Wilson. Broncos came off of that win last week against the Chargers. Raiders coming off of that close loss to the Colts. I like the Raiders to win here. I think they've played well at home, and I feel like they're going to end off this season with a win. And then we'll see what they do with their coach next year with Antonio Pierce. Is he going to be the guy, or are they going to bring in somebody else? So I'll take the Raiders here to win and to cover the 2.5-point spread. So then you got the NFC East matchups. Right, I went through everybody else pretty much. Yeah. So you got the Giants and the Eagles, and then you got the Commanders and the Cowboys. So I guess Sam Howell is going to start this week against the Cowboys, because I know they were going to start Jacoby Brissett, but then that ended up not happening. Actually, let's take a look and see if that, because Jacoby Brissett was supposed to start against the Niners, and that ended up not happening due to injury. So it could be Sam Howell again. Yeah, so this is from a couple days ago. So Ron Rivera told reporters that QB quarterback Sam Howell will start in Week 18 against the Cowboys. He's got a league high 19 interceptions. I mean, again, I thought that maybe the Commanders had something in Howell, but now it's, it hasn't looked good recently. Cowboys are 13.5-point favorites, and if you remember last year, they played each other in Week 18 in Washington, and the Commanders won with Sam Howell. That was his first start. I'll be honest, I actually did take the 13.5, just because. But again, it's a different year. But I don't know. It's a big number. I mean, I don't know. With the 49ers, they cover the numbers. I don't know. The Cowboys, I got to think about it more. Because the other thing, too, is the Cowboys, they could end up just resting people. But they do need this game, though. Because the Eagles, if they win and the Cowboys somehow lose, then the Eagles would retake the division. So the Cowboys are going to have to play their starters pretty much the whole game. Unless they're, up by a lot early on. But, right now I got the 13.5 with the Commanders, so that's my pick. But I think the Cowboys should still win, of course. And then for the Eagles and the Giants. So the Giants are 5.5-point underdogs. Eagles coming in, losing to the Cardinals. I just still can't wrap my head around that. But, yep, that's what happened. The Giants, these teams played each other on Christmas, and the Giants, made it competitive. But, again, they're a team of almost and ifs. And I feel like this is going to be another one of those almost ifs games. The Giants are going to be competitive. Won't be surprised they'll be winning at one point during this game. But I think ultimately the Eagles will take this game and win it. I think the Giants cover the 5.5, but I'm going to take the Eagles. Because the Giants have been competitive. They've been in games. They almost upset the Rams last week. So, you know what? I'm going to say that they keep it close. Also, the Eagles' defense just has been awful recently. So I think that trend continues. So I'll take the Giants with the 5.5, but the Eagles win. So run through the picks. I mean, there was two games I wasn't sure with, but this is what I have for right now. So the Packers and the Bears, got the Bears covering the 3.5 or the 3, but the Packers win. Giants covering the 5.5, but the Eagles win. Cardinals covering the 3.5 points, but the Seahawks win. Broncos and Rams, the Rams winning and covering the 2.5-point spread. going to say the Chiefs cover the 3.5 in the game. And, I'm going to say they're going to win because the Chargers, they really couldn't get anything going offensively last week. So, you know what? I think the Chiefs backups win, and they even with them as an underdog. And then the Niners-Rams game, I don't know. I might take the Niners and have them cover. And then I have the Commanders covering, but the Cowboys winning. So that's the late window games right there. We'll see what happens. Again, we'll know more as to who is, starting, who is sitting, for this week. But yeah, this is basically it, to win a spread pool until spread pool week until next year. So, this is it. Games, there are some good games here, of course. Packers-Bears is one of the better games. Of course, the game we're going to talk about in the next segment, that's the one that we really want to touch upon, and that's the Bills and the Dolphins. But yeah, we've reached the end here in the regular season, and then from here on out, it's going to be playoff talk, and then after that, then you talk about free agency, the draft, and then it starts up again. It's a cycle. So that's kind of where we're at. But so when we get back from our final break of the show, we're going to preview the Dolphins and the Bills. That's the last game of the week. Obviously, depending on what happens, the Bills could either be the 6th seed or the 6th seed, the 2 seed, or they could just flat out not make the playoffs, which would be crazy. So their ceiling is the 2 seed, and then their floor is they're out. They're out of the playoffs. But yeah, it's we're going to see some wacky stuff on over the weekend. We definitely will. And I don't expect all my picks to be right. I expect to get another 7 or 8 wins once again to finish off the year, and then then you got to regroup for next year. But the other thing is, it'll be nice, not to have fantasy football to deal with this week. Just again watch the games. Still kind of bitter for my playoff defeats in all my leagues, because each week, I had 4 teams that made the playoffs, and each week one got eliminated. We weren't, and if we were able to take the next step and make it to the next round, to the championship games, we again could have won them, but it was just because of those first games that we couldn't get there. But yeah, when we come back we'll take our last break, and then when we come back, we'll preview the Bills-Dolphins game. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we're going to now preview the Sunday night game between the Dolphins and the Bills. So obviously, these two teams met. We got to go way back to, I think it was week 4. That was actually the day I went to Chiefs-Jets. It was week 4, and the Bills won 48-20. That was when the Dolphins are coming off of that 70-point performance against the Broncos, and it was like, oh wow, this team could be a Super Bowl contender, and they still can, of course. But then they played the Bills, and the Bills dominated that game. Both teams exchanged touchdowns. It was 14-14, and then the Bills just ran away with it the rest of the way. Josh Allen went 21-25, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Stephon Diggs had 3 touchdowns in that game, 6 for 120. And I mean, what has he been doing recently? You look at the last month. 4 for 24 against the Chiefs, 4 for 48 against the Cowboys, 5 for 29 against the Chargers, 4 for 26 against the Patriots. I mean, what's going on? And Diggs got off to a great start this year. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, I guess because the Bills, they've been running the ball more. Well, at least in some games. I mean, James Cook had that monster game against the Cowboys, but against the Patriots, he only had 16 carries for 48 yards. Against the Chargers, he had 20 for 70. It's interesting. I mean, and could Diggs be done with Buffalo? I mean, if Buffalo misses the playoffs, I mean, he could be. But we'll see. So yeah, that was the Bills side of things. Then you looked at the Dolphins. Tua went 25 of 35, 282 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Devon Achane, 8 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill had 3 for 58. Waddle had 4 for 46. Braxton Berrios had a touchdown in the game. But yeah, the Bills dominated that game. Now it's in Miami. The Dolphins are coming in banged up. Obviously, Bradley Chubb, getting hurt late in the game last week against the Ravens. So he's out for the rest of the season. Just a devastating injury there. I mean, Mostert, he didn't play in the game. You didn't have Waddle. So, yeah, the Dolphins, they need to get back on track here. And it's going to be a tough game, I think, for both teams. The line actually went from 3.5, now it's down to 2.5. Because at least in my spread pool, the Dolphins were 3.5-point underdogs, but now it's down to 2.5. I actually took the Dolphins with the points, but this is going to be a tough game. It's really tough to pick, because I mean, you could really see it go either way, with this game. But, obviously you still got Tyreek Hill is banged up too for the Dolphins as well. Tua is banged up, his non-throwing shoulder. We look at the league rankings for both teams. So the Dolphins are number 1 in passing yards per game. The Bills are 15th. In terms of rushing yards per game, the Dolphins are 5th and the Bills are 7th. And then both teams are top 5 in points per game. Sorry, I'm trying to hold back a sneeze. Again, that always happens at least once or twice on the stream. But anyway, so then on the defensive side of the ball, Dolphins are 14th against with passing yards per game on defense, and then the Bills are 8th, giving up 218.9 passing yards per game. Rushing yards, the Dolphins are 7th against the run, and then the Bills are 15th, and then points allowed, the Bills are 4th, and the Dolphins defense is 21st. So I mean, you would think like, oh, let's take the over, but I don't know. I feel like every time I say that, then the over ends up not hitting. Right now, it opened at 49.5. Now it's down to 48.5. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I mean, I like. At least in the spread pool with the Dolphins, 3.5, I would take the Dolphins to cover, but I'm gonna say the Bills win, just because I have a hard time, seeing them miss the playoffs. But yeah, if the Steelers win, and whatever happens with the AFC South teams, I mean, this is going to be a really important game. This is a playoff game for the Bills, because it's pretty much going to be they either make it or they're going home. And it's crazy because they could end up being a top seed. So, and I don't think the Dolphins want to give up the division. This is for the AFC East. There's like so much on the line with this game. Like there are so many different things that will be impacted if whatever the outcome of this game is going to be. Because for weeks, including myself, if the Bills make the playoffs, nobody's going to want to face them because when we've seen the Bills in the past, they were a top seed. Now, we could see them either getting in or flat out just missing the playoffs in total. Which, again, would be weird, just not seeing Burrow or Allen in the playoffs. I mean, Mahomes is in, of course, and you got Lamar Jackson back there again. But having no Burrow and having no Josh Allen would be unfortunate. Well, we know we're not getting Burrow, but we can still get Allen. So hopefully they're able to get in. But yeah, I mean this is a big game, and with the injury report, let's actually take a look at that. So on the Bills side, I mean nothing we don't already know. With the Dolphins, so yeah, Devon Achane, who's limited on Thursday. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to play. Teron Armstead's limited on Thursday, questionable for Week 18. Obviously, we talked about Bradley Chubb's injury. Tyreek Hill didn't practice on Thursday, but I think that's also because of what happened, with his home. You also got Javon Howard limited on Thursday with a knee injury. Xavier Howard is doubtful for the game against the Bills, so that's going to be rough not having him again. Mostert didn't practice on Thursday; he's questionable. Waddle didn't practice on Thursday; he's questionable. So yeah, it's not looking good right now for the Dolphins. They got some injuries that they're dealing with. So kind of lean towards the Bills. So I might change the pick. But I mean, the Dolphins did get embarrassed, so you would think that, I mean, now that they're back at home, and also, I just don't really trust the Bills. Josh Allen could turn the ball over. The defense has a ton of injuries as well. So, this is gonna be a tough game for both teams. So, we're just going to see how it goes. I said the Bills win, Dolphins cover, but you know what? It could be another game that could be subject to change. But yeah, and then that basically ends off Week 18, and that gets us into the postseason. And then anything can happen. I mean, once you get in, anything can happen. So, but again, I would like to see the Bills in. It would. I mean, at least for me, it would stink if they aren't in it. Just because, again, you want to see Josh Allen and that team in the playoffs. Because it adds more excitement, makes the matchups better. I know because I have a lot of friends that are Jet fans, they would be very happy if the Bills missed the playoffs. But for me, I want to have as many good playoff matchups as possible. So. And we'll see what ends up happening because the Bills, they could be one of the top seeds if they get the win. Because, again, this is for the division, So, and then the Dolphins end up being a wild card team, And we'll see how that – because let's see. So the Dolphins right now – they would play the Bills would end up playing the Chiefs in the first round. So then if the Dolphins end up losing, then they could be playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the first round. But then you also got to see, depending on what happens with Jacksonville as well. Because we talked about it, the AFC South, that's not wrapped up yet. Of course, the Ravens have their bye. But, yeah, I mean, listen, there's definitely there's going to be changes to how the seedings are set up right now, and who's currently in the playoffs at the moment. I don't know. But you know what? Again, everything I've said, the opposite's going to happen probably with some of the stuff. Like I said, the Packers are going to make it. They'll probably lose again to the Bears, and then the Seahawks get in again. The Bills, if the Bills miss the playoffs, there's going to be changes. There's going to be changes. You might not see Stephon Diggs after this year with the Bills. He might say, you know what, get me out of here. Because that there's been a lot of rumblings of that, in recent years. It's been a long. It seems like yesterday when he was watching the Chiefs celebrate the championship, the AFC championship, back during the COVID season. But yeah, it's been a disappointing playoff loss after disappointing playoff loss. They lost that marathon against the Chiefs the following year, and then they just got flat out outplayed by the Bengals in Buffalo last year. And now who knows what's going to happen this year? Are they going to miss the playoffs? But this is a playoff game right here. So it doesn't get any. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't get any bigger than this, because you got actual playoff games in the Super Bowl. But yeah, this is a winner go home scenario basically. Again, depends on what happens with all the other games, but it's most likely going to be you're either going to win your division, or you're going home. So, and the Dolphins, I don't think they want to give up the division. They want to, they want to win this game too. This is an important game for them. They've been struggling. So there's a lot on the line on Sunday night. There's a lot on the line this weekend. Because, again, last week of the regular season. But, I thank you guys for sticking with me. If you watched, these 2 hours of me streaming. I know I've, made some minor errors throughout both. But, it's going to happen, of course. But I appreciate, if you're able to stick around. Obviously, we'll be back again on Monday. We'll be talking about what happened, what transpired over the weekend, get us set for the playoffs. Of course, you got the national championship, like I said, on Monday, so we'll talk about that. And then, of course, the baseball show will be next Friday. Like I said, hopefully we next week we'll have a full slate of shows possibly, not just me but other shows as well, which again. More content, something to look forward to, besides myself. So yeah, but again, I thank you guys for tuning in for both shows today. I apologize for some of the background noise that you heard, with this show before with my dog. But again, it's gonna happen. So, but yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for watching, as always. I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, have a good weekend, enjoy the games, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.